Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. There is an article on page number 1. Supreme Court struck down 51-year-old curbs. Single women can get equal abortion rights. Supreme Court has allowed unmarried and single women whose pregnancies are between 20 and 24 weeks to access safe and legal abortion at par with married women. There are too many things to understand here. I'll take you step by step, helping you understand things piece by piece. And in that scheme of things, let me quickly give you a brief history of abortion laws in India. Up till 1971, abortion was criminalized under Section 312 of IPC. Abortion was considered to be intentionally caused miscarriage. Government of India in 1964 formed a committee to be headed by Shantilal Shah. From 1960s, Government of India was gathering various survey data under National Family Health Survey. It was very well known that the abortion rate in India is very high. 3.6 to 5 million abortions were happening in India annually. In those days, the risk for mother in any abortion process was very high. Because of lack of technology, abortion was very risky. But it was also a fact that abortion was also being happening in large numbers. So government set up a committee to draft abortion law for India. And based upon the recommendation, government came up with an act in 1971. This act was amended recently in 2021. Let's quickly get a sense as to what the law was and how was it changed in 2021. The Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act that was first enacted in 1971 allowed for termination of pregnancy up to 12 weeks on advice of just one doctor. It allowed for termination of pregnancies between 12 to 20 weeks on advice of two doctors. And 20 weeks was the upper limit. Beyond 20 weeks, there was no provision for abortion. But however, abortion could have been done if there was serious risk to the life of the mother. With the amendment that came in 2021, abortion can now be done up till 20 weeks on advice of just one doctor. There was one very important change that was brought in the abortion law in India with the amendment in 2021. There was a window of 4 weeks between 20 to 24 weeks. In this window, abortion can be done for some special categories of pregnant women on advice of two doctors. Later on, the rules for this amendment came and it listed down those special categories of pregnant women. There was another very substantial change that was brought about with this amendment. Beyond 24 weeks, there was provision of termination of pregnancy on only the condition that there is substantial fetal abnormality. And this abnormality has to be declared by a medical board. So after the amendment, every state need to have the medical board. And as before, if there is a serious threat to the life of pregnant women, then abortion can be carried out. But you cannot carry out abortion just because your husband left you, or maybe you change your mind, or for any such reason. In India, abortion can be done at any time if there is threat to the pregnant woman's life. For any reason, you can carry out abortion till 20 weeks on advice of one doctor. Between 20 to 24 weeks, all women cannot carry out abortion. There's a list of some special categories of women that we will talk about very shortly. And beyond 24 weeks, abortion can be carried out only in a case when there is substantial fetal abnormality. And that abnormality has to be declared by a medical board constituted by the state government. There is one very important thing that you should take note of that's extremely important, not just for this news, but from the point of view of larger repercussion in society in the institution of family in India. In the original Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971, abortion can be done only by married women. But the Amendment Act of 2021 allowed the unmarried woman or the single mother to terminate the pregnancy. The amendment to the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 2021 changed the word husband to partner. So previously, termination to pregnancy was allowed up till 20 weeks, but this was only for married women. But presently, it is allowed till 20 weeks only on advice of one doctor for all kind of conceiving women. So this is how the abortion law of India stood till 29th of September until the Supreme Court gave its judgment. Abortion in India is regulated by Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act as amended in 2021. You should know certain important characteristics of this act. It allows for all unmarried women to undergo safe legal abortion, but this is only for 20 weeks. Opinion of only one doctor will be required. There are some special categories of women who can undergo abortion between 20 to 24 weeks. And if there is substantial fetal abnormalities, then there is no upper limit for abortion. Information regarding termination of pregnancy has to be treated as part of privacy of the mother. It can be revealed only to authorized person. Now let's talk about these special categories of women. According to Rule 3B of this Act, there are some special categories of women who can undergo legal abortion beyond 20 weeks, but only up till 24 weeks. They are the survivors of sexual assault or rape or incest. The category also includes some vulnerable women like differently abled or who are minors. It also includes those women whose marital status has changed during the ongoing pregnancy. For example, maybe because of widowhood or divorce. It includes mentally ill women as well. Also, the women who had undergone pregnancy in a humanitarian crisis like situation or during disasters. But what the list does not include explicitly are unmarried women who may have conceived because of some consensual relation. Now understand, till 20 weeks, all women, all conceiving women can undergo abortion, but there is additional 4-week window for some categories of women that does not explicitly include unmarried or single women. And this is the basis of judgment that Supreme Court has given yesterday. This is also one of the serious criticism of this act. There are many other criticisms like the upper limit is still 20 weeks, but many other countries provides upper limit substantially higher. And let me reiterate a thing. The recommendation of Shantilal Shah of 20 week was accepted in 1971 because back in those days technology was not so advanced and there was serious risk during abortion to the life of mother. The later the stage of abortion, the more risky it is for the life of mother. And that was the consideration for restricting it to 20 weeks. But now time has changed, technology has advanced, and this 20 weeks now seems to be on the lower side. There has been additional increase of 4 weeks window, but this comes with serious state control. Two doctors, two medical advice will be required for this. Technology actually has advanced so far presently that abortion can be carried out safely without risking the health or life of mother at any stage of pregnancy. Many countries have actually allowed for legal abortion at any stage of pregnancy. The right to bodily autonomy that Supreme Court has alluded to in yesterday's judgment has not been respected in totality in this act. There is no absolute right of a woman over her body. So state dictates the terms for abortion, the time limits, and the permissions. That is all decided and regulated by the state. There is one more thing on this slide to which I must bring your attention. Supreme Court has observed that the rape mentioned here in Rule 3B must also include marital rape. The issue of marital rape has been making round in newspaper for quite some time. And now various activists has advocated that since this rape mentioned in the statute has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to include marital rape, so it will only be the natural extension of this judgment that Supreme Court now criminalize marital rape. See, criminalizing marital rape is a serious issue for the government because that impinges on the traditional institution of marriage. So far, the government has tried to stay away from discussing the issue of marital rape. So the thing is, the Supreme Court has explicitly recognized the reality of marital rape, but any pronouncement on criminalizing marital rape has not been done. The judgment has focused on this section. When you include certain categories of women in this category, why do you exclude unmarried women? So, the judgment that has come yesterday is this: unmarried women are also entitled to seek abortion of pregnancy in the term of 20 to 24 weeks, arising out of consensual relationship. So basically, in this category under Rule 3B of Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act 2021, in this rule, unmarried women must also get this window of 20 to 24 weeks. Question: why? Supreme Court has given many answers to this question. The court has declared that prohibiting single or unmarried pregnant women to get the benefit of 20 to 24 weeks, while allowing married women with the same term of pregnancy to access abortion between 20 to 24 weeks, is violative of right to equality under Article 14. See, Article 14 calls for equal treatment before the law and equal protection by the law. But you understand that different categories are made for special treatment. Reservation policy of government is not violative of Article 14. Special schemes that comes for women, children, old age, SC/STs, they are not violative of Article 14. Because there is a judicial doctrine of reasonable classification. If the circumstances of different people are different, they can be classified as a different group for special protection by the state, for special provisions to be made by the state. And that's completely okay. But that classification should be reasonable. Supreme Court has said a single or unmarried woman may suffer the same changes in circumstances, or they may have the same kind of injury or mental illness that a married pregnant woman may have. She may also be abandoned or lose job. She may also be subjected to domestic violence during the ongoing pregnancy. She may also not want to have a baby with the former partner. So the source of pregnancy may be the cause of her vulnerabilities, the same that applies to other women. So not including unmarried women, single women is not reasonable. So the doctrine of reasonable classification that Supreme Court of India has propounded, that's getting violated. And violating the doctrine of reasonable classification automatically violates Article 1415. Supreme Court has also said that the rights of reproductive autonomy, dignity, and privacy, they are part of Article 21. Reproductive rights, they are part of right to life with human dignity. And the artificial distinction between married and unmarried women, that was not constitutionally sustainable. Supreme Court has reasoned that if women with unwanted pregnancies are forced to carry out the pregnancy to full term, the state would be stripping their rights, the right to determine the immediate and the long-term path of their lives. And hence, it's violative of right to life. It is also violative of their right to dignity, because it will deprive women of autonomy not only over their bodies but also over their lives. And that's why it will take away their dignity. See, understand, right to life comes along with right to dignified life as well. And you need to understand that dignity comes from autonomy. Aristotle has said that dignity to human life comes from our ability to take decisions. And you have ability to take decisions only when you have autonomy. You cannot ensure right to life with dignity without giving commensurate autonomy, freedom, and liberty. Now understand the linkage here. Life must have dignity, and dignity comes from autonomy. And this autonomy will include reproductive autonomy. The court said that the reproductive autonomy requires every pregnant woman to have the intrinsic right to choose to undergo or to not undergo abortion, and without any consent or authorization from any third party. This is extremely crucial in the judgment of the Supreme Court. This is the observation that the court has made. Now it is for the government to bring an amendment in this regard, to take permission from the state, making medical advice mandatory, that is against their right to choose. Autonomy requires that there shouldn't be any demand for authorization. And without autonomy, there is no dignity. So reproductive autonomy now is part of Article 21. Reproductive autonomy has been linked by the Supreme Court by reproductive rights. And yesterday's judgment of the Supreme Court has expanded the ambit of reproductive rights. The court has said that the reproductive rights of women includes a constellation of rights and entitlements and freedom. Supreme Court has said that reproductive rights will not just include the right to decide whether or not or of what type of contraceptive to use, but it also includes right to access education and information about contraception and sexual health. It includes right to choose whether or when to have children, right to choose the number of children, and right to choose safe and legal abortion. It includes the right to access reproductive health care. And listen and remember this, it also includes autonomy to make decisions on these rights. I'll tell you one very important thing now. There's a trinity of Article 19, 21, and 14. You understand that right to life under Article 21 actually implies right to dignified life. And dignity cannot come without autonomy, liberty, and freedom. So, Article 21 is intrinsically linked with Article 19. And you will never feel autonomous or free unless you are being treated equally at par with others. Article 19 requires Article 14 to be operational. And that's why it's called Trinity of Articles of the Constitution 14, 19, and 21. But it is not just this that it is violative of Article 14 and Article 21. Supreme Court also has talked about other important things that you have to bear in mind, not just for this news, but as the larger principles and doctrines that you will keep in your hand while discussing and writing any polity and governance related topic. Supreme Court has said that there is a need to have a forward-looking interpretation of the law. Previously, I have told you that in the Amendment Act of 2021, the word husband was changed by the word partner. An abortion right was already given to unmarried and single women up till 20 weeks. Now, the question was only for this window, 20 to 24 weeks. And this judgment is based on appeal coming from Delhi High Court. There was a pregnant woman, 25 years old, with pregnancy of 23 weeks and 5 days. She went to legally abort the pregnancy to Delhi High Court, but Delhi High Court gave no respite to the petitioner. The basis of the judgment of Delhi High Court was there is no provision in the law. Supreme Court said that the Delhi High Court took a very restrictive view of the law. And Supreme Court observed that the law already has made changes by changing the word husband to partner. So there is a need for forward-looking interpretation of the law. There's a need to bring the liberal ideas in the Constitution in the spirit of the law. And this is also a guideline for various high courts of India. It is also a fact that abortion happens in India at very high rate. Close to 8 women every day die in India because of unsafe abortion. So Supreme Court also has taken the social reality into consideration for giving the judgment. Supreme Court in various previous judgments has said it is not the intention of the law, but the effect of the law that must be considered by the judiciary. So the larger takeaway that you must put in your conscience from this news are these. You need to understand what is the role of judiciary. First of all, their job is to do the judicial review of the legislation. It is mandated by Article 13 of the Constitution. You must also think whether this judgment will fall in the category of judicial activism or judicial overreach. You must know various doctrines that Supreme Court applies in giving various judgments, which are not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution of India, but is in the spirit of constitutionalism. One such doctrine that was mentioned in the discussion we had is doctrine of reasonable classification. Previously in the DNS, we have discussed this in great detail, just this topic as to what is this doctrine of reasonable classification. Concerning other news in the newspaper, you must be reading about the essential religious practice test. This is another doctrine that has been invented by the Supreme Court. So these doctrines and principles that Supreme Court adopts, you must know them and learn to use that in your answers. Supreme Court has given various judgments from the time period of 2017-18. Supreme Court has given Shabrimala judgment, Putta Swami judgment, Navteej Singh Johar judgment, the Hadia judgment, and others. In all those judgments, Supreme Court has talked about the liberal constitution, the liberal ideas of constitution, liberty given to individuals that must be protected. The demand for social conformity cannot take the place of constitutionally guaranteed liberty to individuals. And the recent judgments of Supreme Court, if you think, has followed the doctrine, the idea of liberal constitution. You must also give some thought to your mind regarding what is the role of judiciary in making law compatible with social realities. There has been various judgment given in the past. You must think of them and list it down in the comment section. In 2017, UPSC has asked a question in the mains exam: examine the scope of fundamental rights in the light of latest judgment of the Supreme Court on right to privacy. See, once a Supreme Court judgment has come, expanding the scope of right or taking a very strong position regarding rights and liberties of citizens, then it cannot go back. Once in Putta Swami judgment, Supreme Court declared right to privacy as fundamental right under Article 21. Now, this is the legal constitutional stand. When a new case comes up, Supreme Court cannot go back on this because this has been declared as a fundamental right. So when Aadhaar judgment came, Putta Swami judgment was the foundation, the basis for the Aadhaar judgment. Similarly, when Navteej Singh Johar case came, where Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality and struck down parts of Section 377 of IPC, any act of intimacy, that is a private act that falls under right to privacy. And right to privacy is a fundamental right. And fundamental rights cannot be violated under ordinary circumstances. So if it is a fundamental right, you cannot violate it, you cannot criminalize it. So this section has to be struck down. So the question was, examine the scope of fundamental rights, how the ambit of fundamental rights have increased after the Supreme Court judgment on right to privacy. In 2022, UPSC has asked this question in GS paper 2. The most significant achievement of modern law in India is the constitutionalization of environmental problems by the Supreme Court. The important judgments that comes and their larger implication, you have to pay special attention to that for the mains exam. Now let me give some food to your thought and you try answering these two questions. Formulate a rough sketch of the answer, discuss that among yourself, send me if you want to. First question for you is, what impact can Supreme Court's recent judgment have on traditional family structure of India? This is not just regarding yesterday's judgment. Supreme Court in various previous judgment also has considered live-in relationship to be at par with marriage. Previously, the laws used to differentiate between a married woman and unmarried or single woman as far as abortion and adoption goes. But Supreme Court has made judgments on both. So now the question is, traditionally the institution of marriage was considered to be constituting a husband who was biological man, a wife who was biological woman, who are married by traditional rites, because Hindu Marriage Act and Special Marriage Act mentions for rites and rituals to be fulfilled. And the family has children born out of union of husband and wife. But that traditional understanding is now changing. So prepare this for GS paper 2 and also for the society section of GS paper 1. The other question that you must think about is this: what role Supreme Court has played in recent times in the constitutionalization of social problems? Discuss this statement with help of relevant case laws. Make sure you have sufficient content to tackle both these questions. There is an article in today's newspaper, how much should India prop up the rupee? You would know that rupee has depreciated to all-time low of around 81 rupee for every dollar. To control rupee depreciation, RBI has been intervening in the forex market. And in this context, the article has critically discussed the RBI's move to control the exchange rate management. Before we get into the move of RBI and critical discussion on that, I would like to have some basic discussion with you on exchange rate management. And before we get into exchange rate management, first of all, we must understand why there is a need to manage the exchange rate, or rather, on what does the exchange rate depend on. For instance, if $1 is equal to rupees 60, then this is the exchange rate for rupee and dollar. For every dollar, you will get 60 rupees. Consider this to be the case of demand and supply for any other good. If the price of iPhone increases, that means that demand for the product is increasing. Similarly, if the share price goes up, that means the demand for that share is increasing. So is the case for rupee dollar exchange. If $1 is costing more rupee, that means the demand for dollar in the market is increasing. Or vice versa. The appreciation in price of any service and good could also be because of limitation of supply. So if rupee is depreciating, it actually means that the demand of dollar is either increasing or its supply is decreasing. So overall, we can say there is shortage of dollar in the economy. And when the shortage will occur, if we are increasing our import or the cost of import is increasing. For instance, when the crude oil prices shoot up, then there was huge depreciation in rupee because for imports we have to pay in dollars. And if the import is becoming costlier, then we are paying out more dollars. That means dollar is getting out of our economy, that will create shortage. Or when there is decrease in exports, exports brings in the dollar in the economy. When export decreases, the supply of dollar in the economy decreases. FDI, FPI, they also brings in dollar. The foreign investors bring dollars, get it exchanged by the RBI or from the market, and then invest in rupee. So they bring dollar in the economy. Similarly, remittances also brings dollar in the economy. That dollar get exchanged for the rupee and then is invested in the economy. Exports, investments, remittance, they all bring dollars. Imports use up the dollar from the economy. So if import increases and export investment and remittances decreases, they all will cause shortage of dollar. So how does it impact the economy? See, in the short term, the exporters will gain from it. Exporters get money in dollar and then they get it exchanged in the economy for rupee. So for every dollar, they will get more number of rupee. So exporters will profit from depreciating rupee and importers will have a loss. So imports will become costly and exports will become profitable. But in case of India, remember, import is much higher than export. So even if export becomes profitable, that's not going to bring in so much of dollar as much as will be utilized for imports. So dollar shortage will only increase with time. And so will rupee depreciation. And this may be headed towards balance of payment crisis. In short to medium term, shortage of dollar or to say depreciation in rupee will have bearing on inflation as well. Higher value of imported goods drives up the rate of inflation in India because the higher value of imported goods will drive up import led inflation. According to RBI's report, 5% depreciation of rupee would add to about 15 basis points of domestic inflation. When there is depreciation, RBI intervenes in the forex market so as to decrease the volatility and arrest the depreciation. And you understand depreciation is happening because of shortage of dollar. So what effectively RBI does is to pump in dollar in the economy. So RBI sells dollar and pull out rupee. But then this decreases the volume of forex reserve of India. For the government, the external commercial borrowing will become costly because for every dollar you'll have to pay more number of rupee. Now let's look at some practice question to understand the concept that we have discussed better. Which of the following could possibly lead to rupee depreciation in India? Rupee depreciation would mean shortage of dollar. Remember, decline in exports, exports brings in dollar. So decline will create shortage. Increase in imports will create shortage. Adoption of Fed tapering in USA. Fed tapering would mean increase in interest rate by the Federal Bank of US. When interest rate increases in stable economy like US, people take away their money and deposit in the bank. Because it's safe, the return is guaranteed. That leads to flying away of dollar and hence creating domestic shortage of dollar. Increase in inflation within India will either be because of more amount of money. When rupee is more in the market, then its amount increases proportional to dollar. Inflation could also be because of restriction in supply. In that case, there will be more import. and import will use up the dollar. So all of them can be the possible cause of rupee depreciation. Which of the following can be considered as effect of rupee depreciation? When there is rupee depreciation, there is shortage of supply of dollar. Shortage of supply of dollar could restrict import, and that could lead to import-led inflation. Shortage of supply of dollar or rupee depreciation will make external borrowing costly, so it may decrease it. So the cost of borrowing will increase, not decrease. Depreciation will increase the import bill because in India, import is much larger than export. So current account deficit will increase. And yes, exporters do have more incentive to export because of better return. So export competitiveness of India will improve. This question is from 2019 paper. Which one of the following is not the most likely measure of government or RBI to stop the slide of rupee? Curbing imports on non-essential goods and promoting exports. To stop the slide of Indian rupee, we have to increase the amount of dollar in the economy. Curbing imports will reduce using up the dollar in the economy. So this can be helpful. Encouraging Indian borrowers to issue rupee dominated masala bonds. Rupee dominated masala bonds will help in paying in rupee rather than dollar. So this will also help in reducing the flying away of dollar. Easing conditions related to external commercial borrowing. When you borrow externally, you have to borrow in dollar. So external commercial borrowing will increase dollar in the economy. So this may also be helpful. Following an expansionary monetary policy. Expansionary monetary policy will increase rupee rather than dollar. To arrest depreciation of Indian rupee, we have to increase dollar, not rupee. So this won't be helpful. With reference to Indian economy, consider the following statements. If the inflation is too high, RBI is likely to buy government securities. Inflation too high, meaning too much of rupee. When RBI buy government securities, it gives money in return. So it will further increase the amount of money in the economy, which is not helping the cause of checking inflation. If the rupee is rapidly depreciating, RBI is likely to sell dollars in the market. Selling dollars will increase dollars. Depreciation means restricted supply of dollar. To arrest depreciation, we have to increase dollar, so this will be helpful. If interest rates in the USA or European Union were to fall, this is likely to induce RBI to buy dollars. If interest rate there falls, then keeping money in that economy or banks in the economy will not be incentivized. So they will bring their dollar in Indian economy, increasing the supply of dollar. So to avoid volatility at that juncture, RBI must buy the extra coming dollars. So this statement is correct. Now the question is, what RBI has done so far to check the depreciation of rupee? RBI has been selling dollars. You understand, depreciation of rupee meaning there is less supply of dollar. So RBI must sell dollars. Where does it sell from? RBI has a reserve called as foreign exchange reserve, forex reserve. This reserve is maintained in dollar. So it can sell from there. So far, RBI has been successful in ensuring that there is no large scale rupee depreciation in short amount of time. But even then, slowly, gradually, rupee has been sliding down. So is this the right approach? First of all, everyone agrees that in absence of such a step by RBI, there would have been large rupee depreciation. And that would have caused inflation, increased the cost of external commercial borrowing, made export bill exorbitantly high. Current account deficit will increase, and all these will cause macroeconomic instability. However, due to such intervention, the forex reserve has declined by $94 billion in last 12 months. It is also suggested that factors that are contributing to rupee depreciation are beyond RBI's control. So, RBI should not keep depleting the forex reserve to check rupee depreciation. There should be a holistic approach both by the government and RBI, and sole dependence on forex reserve is not a wise option. By now, it must be very clear to you, if you have to arrest rupee depreciation, somehow you have to increase the amount of dollar in the economy. That can be done by attracting more inflows of investment. We can also liberalize the external commercial borrowing norms. We can attract NRI deposits. The foreign portfolio investment limits in government securities, this can also be increased. Any kind of investment or remittance that will come in the form of dollar. It is also suggested that RBI must increase the policy rates to reduce the difference of policy rates in India and US or other European market. Return on government securities, they slides with policy rates, and hence increase in policy rates will attract more foreign portfolio investments. So it is suggested that intervention in forex market should only be in case of large scale volatility, because it is imperative for RBI to maintain adequate forex reserve. As of now, the forex reserve is around $550 billion, and India's import cover stands at 8.4 months. Meaning, using this forex reserve, India can pay for the import bill for 8.4 months. RBI must ensure this import cover does not fall below 6 months. There is a news article on page number 14 regarding rude and irresponsible remark by an IAS officer in the state of Bihar. The remark was against a girl student seeking for help concerning pads. And in return for seeking help, the girl actually got undignified, disrespectful remark from the IAS officer. Here we'll take the opportunity to discuss this news article in the context of expected role of the civil servant as per the syllabus of GS paper 4. UPSC in the recent time has asked many questions concerning the issue. In fact, every year you'll find one or two questions on the very same topic, either in section A or in case study. In this year mains, UPSC has asked, apart from intellectual competency, moral qualities, empathy and compassion are some of the other vital attributes that facilitate the civil servants to become more competent. In the same paper, UPSC has asked another question. Wisdom lies in knowing what to reckon with and what to overlook. An officer being engrossed with the periphery, ignoring the core issues before him, is no rare in the bureaucracy. Do you agree that such preoccupation of an administrator leads to travesty of justice, to the cause of effective service delivery and good governance? You see, in this question, they have asked about ignoring the core issues. Core issues include justice, effective service delivery, good governance, ethical governance, fulfilling the constitutional promise. All in all, I can say one of the crucial job of civil servant is to manage the ethical issues in the administration rather than just getting tied up with the day-to-day administrative job. UPSC often again asks about the essential values that is needed to be an effective public servant. And when you mention essential values, you mention empathy, you mention compassion, you mention tolerance, you mention impartiality, you mention humility, you mention integrity. And all that merges towards upholding public interest, towards fulfilling the constitutional promise, towards establishing people-centric administration. UPSC has asked previously, I think in 2019, non-performance of duty by a public servant is a form of corruption. Many times UPSC has asked questions regarding emotional intelligence as to how you'll use it in better administrative practices. The concerned IAS officer here seems to be lacking emotional intelligence. If you look at the syllabus, you'll find values like empathy, tolerance, compassion mentioned there, emotional intelligence, application in administration and governance. You'll find topics like ethical concerns in administration, conscience as source of ethical guidance, values in governance, ethical governance. UPSC has again and again asked on the concept of public service. You have to put people at the center of administration. Civil servants are expected to follow code of ethics, code of conduct, and in the issue we are discussing, all these seems to be absent. So let's answer this basic question. Why is there a frequent violation of code of conduct or abuse of power by law enforcement officers or by civil servants in general? If I have to rephrase the concerned IAS officer in the news, why did she behave in the manner and the way she did? When you have to give reason for something in this paper, you begin from within. Within a person, there are certain things we all carry. We carry certain information that becomes part of our cognition. Many a times it is felt that little bit of corruption is not wrong. That's the prime reason why most of us get indulged into a corrupt act. Perhaps the IAS officer concerned must not have realized that this will become the national news and she will have to pay for it. She will have to later write an apology letter to the press. The wrong notion that we carry, the wrong knowledge that we have, that becomes the foundation for our unethical act. Apart from information, we also carry emotion. The negative emotion like anger, greed, lust, that leads to unethical act causing injustice and violence. Maybe the concerned IS officer could not control her anger. She was not emotionally so intelligent to manage her emotion. So either negative emotion is flowing more or there is absence of positive emotion like empathy, compassion, tolerance. These are two fundamental things from which human behavior flows from. Then there are other things mentioned in your syllabus, conscience as source of ethical guidance, in absence of fully developed conscience. There may not be guilt, inner dissonance, unhappy state of mind after indulging into unethical act. And hence we become ethically blind towards our action. We do not examine our action as called for by Socrates. Cognition and emotion, they get combined to become values. And from values flows out our attitude. Values are more enduring. Values are common for different situations. It remains more or less same over the period of time. But attitude is the tendency to behave in a particular situation with particular people. And civil servants may have bureaucratic attitude, the attitude that make them feel high and mighty. So maybe they are well behaved with their colleagues and their seniors, but the attitude to behave well with people is not there. These are the things which are internal to a person: cognition, emotion, values, conscience, and attitude. But the unethical behavior could also be driven because of external circumstances. Maybe there is no ethical ecosystem in administration. Maybe the check of press is not there. Maybe this is the accepted way of behavior in administration by civil servants. And unethical action could also get motivated because of lapse in the implementation of laws. Crony capitalism, lack of accountability, these could be some other external reasons as to why a person is behaving unethically. A civil servant must get motivated by empathy, compassion. These are foundational values of civil servants. They must have tolerance. Tolerance is imperative for other values to get expressed. Unless you are tolerant, you cannot be impartial, you cannot be objective. You will not consider others' point of view, forget about feeling and understanding the situation of others. When you prepare expected role of civil servants, one of the important role is to manage ethics in administration. You need to lay down the boundaries, build important safeguards against corruption, against unethical act. You have to adopt the principles that works in public interest in administration. You have to follow rule of law. You have to create values in administration. This is one of the core job of civil servants, especially at higher position. Citizen-centric administration is one of the goal of administration. You must have heard of Saurav Kumar. He was the DM of Dantewada district and he started this initiative of lunch with collector. Similarly, you must have definitely heard of Prashant Nair. He is famously called as Collector Bro. Bro is informal term that you use to call someone who's very close to you, like a brother, and also a friend. The goal of these initiatives is to break the psychological barrier between collectors, civil servants, and the general people. People must feel free to approach the DMs, SPs, and other senior officers, and other senior officers must feel that they are one of them. Behave nicely with them. Treat them in a dignified manner and understand that they are public servants and public interest is a larger goal that they should work towards. That will bring the spirit of public service. If a girl has asked for pads, be empathetic to understand her problem. Have the spirit of public service to provide her one. MG Raja Manikyam, he used to carry rice sacks on his shoulder without any hesitation during the time of Kerala floods. You have tons of examples of civil servants who have shown extraordinary spirit of public service. The DM of Osmanabad in Maharashtra, he sat down on floor when a differently abled person visited him in the office. That's the way you treat people if you have a spirit of public service. So now if I ask you another question, what are the principles and procedures to be followed by the civil servant in public interest? To give you a rough sketch of the answer to this question, they should follow the constitutional principles. The promises in preamble, the directives and directive principle of state policy, they should follow that to develop a just society, to reduce inequality, bring justice of all kind in society, environmental conservation, other things. They should follow the principle of popular sovereignty, meaning the real power lies in the hands of people. This principle civil servants should always bear in mind. They are there to serve people. Service to man is service to God. With that spirit, they have to work. Rest of the principles you can read yourself. If we talk about procedures, they must follow the code of conduct. They must follow certain procedures laid down by the courts. To write down the dissent note when the civil servant does not agree with the directive of the political head. There are many international conventions that also lay down certain procedures. That pretty much covers the relevant things from the syllabus concerning the issue. There is an article on page number 1. UNESCO lists 50 iconic Indian textiles. UNESCO has released a list of 50 iconic heritage textile craft of India. The list is there in the report titled Handmade for the 21st Century, Safeguarding Traditional Indian Textile. This is very significant because one of the chief problems in conservation and revival of intangible cultural heritage of India is lack of inventory and documentation. These are some of the important handicraft work mentioned in the report by UNESCO. I can read it out aloud, but rather I'll leave you in peace and silence to read them yourself and give some time before you close for today's DNS to memorize them because they are important for the prelims exam. Until next time, goodbye, take care.